Hi guys, I know there was some talk of doing a bit of a bread class, but I'm not really sure how practical that is, and I'm not even sure that I'm that good to be honest. But anyway, here's just a very simple recipe that I use. I've sort of come up with it, although it's very kind of just rudimentary figures anyway. And the video is quite long, but I'm kind of talking throughout bits, and there's lots of kind of musings and learning points. So give it a go and see what you think. Then you want to give these guys a good mix. Until you have something that looks like this. Then just going to leave that, cover it, leave it for like at least 12 hours in kind of a warmish plate. We're going to add that into our main dough. And then again, you're just going to mix everything up in the bowl until it's pretty homogeneous. Kind of after maybe 1 minute of mixing, you can see we've got a little bit of kind of flour hanging about, but that's absolutely fine. And then really you've got many choices of what to do here. If your yeast is really low and the dough is going to move quite slowly, you can just keep it in the bowl and you can give it kind of a series of turns, which is, I mean, essentially just lifting the bottom up, stretching it, and then over, turning the bowl, lifting the bottom up, stretching it, and over. You can do that kind of like 4 times, so 1 complete kind of rotation of the bowl, or you can do that a couple of times, and then kind of every half an hour for the next couple of hours, you can repeat that, and that's going to develop your gluten. However, other methods, such as like the slap and fold method, kind of made famous by Richard Burtonnet, that's kind of the thing I go for. Then you've got other ones, so I'll get the dough out and just kind of show you different ways of doing it, but they all achieve the same goal, which is kind of gluten development. And it's really important to knead in non-sourdough bread, because in sourdough bread you use a thing called an autolyse or an autolyse, which is where you just let the flour and the water soak together for about kind of half an hour up to a few hours, and that will develop the gluten. But in in yeasted bread, I should say, you need to develop the gluten up front. So let's get the dough out and show you. So this isn't a particularly wet dough, but you've got your dough scraper here, which you can use to just keep the dough together. So kind of use the flat edge and just move it all together. But anyway, so some people will get the dough, they will just lift it up like this, just be folding it in on itself. You can do that, that is not a problem. This dough isn't that wet, but if I was kneading dough, I tend to slap it over and then fold it. So big slap, stretch it, fold it, slap, fold, slap, fold, slap, fold. You can see right now it's a shaggy, unorganised mess. You've got bits of the poolish that aren't incorporated, it's clumpy, but with just a few of these it's going to change already. The pros of this technique is you get really good gluten development. The cons, certainly for the beginning, you get lots of dough all on your hands. If you need to use your hands, it's not the best technique. For example, if you've got kids, or someone's about to call you, or you need to do something, you're going to need to clean your hands, so that's not ideal. You can already see now the dough is much more smooth, and that's under a minute pretty much. So that's why this is a nice technique. It gets things going quickly. Also, if the dough is a bit wetter though, you can have bits of dough flying everywhere, which is not ideal. Other techniques, for example, bread ahead, they teach you to open up the palm of your hand and just push it, and push it as far as you can, and then bring the dough back, literally pushing it as far as you can, bring the dough back. This is good because you have a clean hand, you have a dirty hand, so I can see the merits of that. And if you're working with really wet doughs or brioche, it's a really nice method to use. Anyway, we'll just carry on going the way we're going, because now we're getting to a good place. Just the key thing with any kneading, you've already got flour in the recipe. You don't want to add more flour. You don't need to. This is quite a dry dough, but it might be wetter than some of you are already used to. So the key thing is just trust the process. Another problem with this is it can be quite loud. And if you've got a stiff dough like this, it's can be tiring as well. So you really need to pick what you want to do. And the idea is really slapping it, pulling it out and folding it over. You see it's breaking here because the gluten is not strong enough. And the way you know it's ready is, first of all, it's going to stop sticking to the surface. That's the first thing. You're going to know because as you start to pull on it or try and separate it, or when you slap it down, it's going to be holding on to itself. It's going to want to stay together. You can already see this now is not really sticking. I don't know if you can see, but we're getting more of a kind of a taut surface. It's almost like a skin is developing. Right, so now I think we're getting to the next stage, where it's definitely starting to hold together a bit more. Now when I pull it out, you see it's not breaking in the way it was breaking just a minute ago. Take it all the way, not breaking. It'll also stop sticking to your hands, ideally. really feel it resisting now as I'm trying to pull it out. For me, that's telling me the dough is pretty much done. You can see it pulling onto itself. It's not sticking anymore. You can just lift it, no problem. Just not sticking. Happy days. I don't know if you can see, but there's sort of like almost like a skin that's formed on top of the loaf. And again, now there's many ways to go. You can do what you like. Some people flour the top, flip it over. Some people leave the dough out of the way, flour the surface. But the key thing about dough is you want a smooth side and you want a rough side, which is here. Because when we come to shape it, you want a side that's going to stick to itself to give you the kind of stickiness, so it all holds together, and you want a side which is smooth. So this is my smooth side here. Right. You can go either way. I like to just flour the top, give it a nice dusting. I'm going to flip it over, put a little bit of flour, and then you're just going to start bringing each bit, and as you do that, another bit sticks out, 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 and this will go on indefinitely until you flip it over. And then just give it a little bit of smoothing it off. And then what you have there is a wonderfully soft dough. Again, a bit of flour. They say you should always patch. And then back into the bowl. If you touch the dough now, just going to spring exactly back because of the gluten, and there's literally no air in there now. So now it's going to start the process of fermentation. Well, to be honest, the process started as soon as the hot water and the yeast and the flour all came together, but obviously we were knocking any fermentation out by doing the slapping. Hi guys, so the dough is proving downstairs, which just gives me a chance to talk about temperature. Obviously we have our flour, we have our water, we have our salt, we have our yeast or starter, but if we don't give the dough the temperature it needs, then it's not going to rise. To a certain point, if it gets cold enough, it will stop rising entirely, which is why a lot of people put their sourdough in the fridge, or it will rise so excruciatingly slowly that it becomes kind of a point that you can just bake it whenever you want, so it's a convenience thing as well. But for kind of direct doughs, which is what this is a same day dough, we want things to move at a good pace. So I've left it in the kitchen, the oven's already on, it's kind of preheating, so the maximum, which is like around 250 degrees, but I've not measured it. So it's quite warm in there. I used quite warm water, again, because you want the temperature to be a good 20, 23, 24 degrees, but also I keep my flour in the garage, which is very cold, so I make the water a lot warmer just to accommodate that, because I know that the flour is going to drop the temperature of the water in the overall dough. So yeah, so we'll let it prove. I've kind of set my timer for an hour, but when we get down there, we'll look at actually what does the dough look like, and how do we know that it's ready following its kind of bulk ferment or first. Right, we're about an hour in. Definitely you can see it's got a bit more air in it. It's a bit softer. It's a little bit billowy. You can see those indentations are taking longer to come back up. That said, still not ready. So this is an hour and 45 later. You can see we've got more rise. If you look down in the corners, I don't know if you can to see, but it's sort of very slightly domed. When you move it, you can just feel the air kind of everywhere. So this is ready for turning out. So anyway, you just loosen off the sides of the dough and then tip it out. And you're tipping it out onto the smooth side. That's a big chunk. And what I'm going to do is split this into probably like roughly a 900 gram size. So you cut down and pull away, cut down, pull away, cut down, pull away, cut down, pull away, cut down, pull away. Here will become sort of our for gas. So this is sort of like a straight edge here, you can't see it. So I'm just going to take this bit here and sort of cut into it. And you're sort of left with like a triangle. Now my tip is to put this on a baking tray straight away. So if I do that and then show you. The tip with any kind of, move this out of the way. The tip with any kind of bread that's only proven once is to be very gentle. So I'm going to make one slice down the middle. You're just going to separate it a little bit. And from here, then you're just going to make a couple of other slices. And you want to just gently pull them apart. So obviously as this goes in and hits the oven, it's going to start to expand. So we want a nice separation going in. Then if you've got the time, you can add little breaks right at the top. And that's just going to make it a little bit more crispy. You can see here actually this this bread is actually a little bit underproofed. I don't know if you can notice, it's maybe on the right side a bit more, but it just seems a bit more patchy on the surface, which is a sign that it's not really gone fully through the process. The inside was good. It'll just be interesting to see how the next loaves are in terms of colour, considering they'll have had another kind of hour or so to ferment. But yeah, it tasted delicious though. I mean, it was ridiculously good. Here, not a massively open crumb, but you can see it is quite even. And you know, to get that much more open, you probably increase the hydration a bit and make it a bit, probably prove it a bit longer to be honest. But I had to divide when I did, just because the other doughs were ready to go. So you can see really with this, what I'm trying to do is kind of pull more from top down and really stretch the dough out, and then by doing that you're creating the kind of almost like a triangle to then make the right kind of shape. And then obviously I'm patting it down, and then as you're doing that you're kind of stretching it away and then pushing it away again. That's just creating tension kind of on the top of the loaf, which is sort of what you want. And then bish bash bosh, just check it is the right size, and then into the tin. So we've used a poolish for this bread and this dough. Another pre-ferment, which is quite famous, is known as a biga, which is Italian, and that's a much more stiff kind of pre-ferment. So you've got the poolish, you've got the biga, and what I've got here is some of the dough left over. I'm not going to throw it away. I'm going to put it in the bowl, put it in the fridge for about a day, and if I was baking bread tomorrow, I would just cut that dough up and then put it in to the main dough build, and then you're essentially getting, it's like spiking your new dough build with like old bread, fermented bread. It's going to improve the colour and the taste and the crust, so it's a really good way. If you think you're going to bake bread the next day as well, just hold a bit of bread back and then add it in tomorrow. It's a really good way of getting better bread. So you can see we've had a lot of rise here, and if we poke it, we see it slowly coming back up, and actually quite a bit of it remains, and this is probably getting close to overproofed. But with a tin loaf, that's what you want. You kind of want the loaf to go into the oven almost fully ready, so you don't actually want a great deal of spring. If there's too much kind of energy, I guess, left in the loaf before you put it in, or when you put it in, sorry, then it's going to expand far too much in the oven, and then that's going to lead to lots of tearing. And ideally, you don't want to have to score tinned loaf. Like most of the tin loaf you see in like bakeries, they're not scored. So let's see how this goes. We'll bake this probably 250 for like 15 minutes, and then I'll lower it down to about 230, and we'll just see what happens. Obviously put loads of steam in there as well, so get kind of boiling water in a tray at the bottom and pour it in just as the loaf's going in, and let's see what happens. I think it's proved enough that this isn't going to tear, but you never know really with bread. So here's that kind of that learning point. You can see the crust here is just all the same. There's no one particular bit which is patchy or anything like that, and that's just because the bread had longer to ferment. If we tip it out, you can see it's got a kind of golden appearance. It's very symmetrical. And then most importantly, if you tap it, you hear that kind of hollow thing as you've seen. So yeah, all in all, good. And then again, you can just hear the crust there, which is lovely. And there you have it. Obviously, key thing is to wait until it's fully cooled before you tear into it, because it's still cooking even when you take it out of the oven. And then if it lasts long enough, you can always just like freeze individual slices. But you know, if you're making it when there's more than, you know, 1 or 2 people around, like bread like this doesn't really last that long, unless you're very restrained, because it's just so delicious. But yeah, anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think. It's my first time ever editing anything, so some feedback would be fantastic. And then if you do actually make the bread, send it to me, because I'd love to see.